Hi everybody, welcome back to the Ecosystem. This is yet another episode where we got somebody who's been around in the ecosystem for quite some time, to get to exchange a few things and then maybe get to learn from them and them getting to share what they think about our ecosystem. And as always, feel free to share comments or ask questions or who you think should be on our desk, in the next episode. So yeah, happy to have you here. Today's guest is none other than Israel. Israel, he now runs Irembo, arguably the biggest tech company in the country. Am I right to say that?
I think you're right.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's, how many are you now?
About 100 of us.
Yeah, so I've known him for quite some time. And before Irembo, he was at Zipline. Yeah. I think you started with the guys here, didn't you?
Yes.
And then expanded into how many countries in Africa now? So you're in Rwanda, Ivory Coast, Ghana,
Nigeria,
and Kenya. Yeah. Wow, and still growing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I've known him, background in pharmacy, now running a tech company. Tell me about it, and so we're happy to have you here, man. And as always, I mean, what we do here is just, a very normal, or would I say organic conversation where we get to share a few things. So usually the segment is called 10 Qs with now Israel. We just ask you 10 questions, usually most of the time. Some come back, some don't. I mean, if you've watched some of our previous videos, I mean, probably you'll be familiar with one of the questions. Sometimes we improvise, but all in all to say that what we're trying to look to do here is pretty much to share, hoping, because that's why we call it ecosystem, hoping that this benefits in one way or the other our ecosystem. So, I mean, to get us started, obviously, say who you are, but in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe something that most of our viewers do not know about Israel.
First of all, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Such a great pleasure to be here and kind of feel like a fanboy. I've watched many of the shows and I sort of made it to now be the one here.
Oh, thank you.
So as you said, I have a background in pharmacy.
Yeah.
But have always had this interest at the intersection of healthcare and technology. And even before doing pharmacy, I kind of did some Cisco programs. My goal has always wanted to do computer science.
What happened? Why didn't you do it?
Well, I ended up having a lot of marks that required me to take a bigger program in sciences. But when I took the pharmacy degree, I actually started working as a manager of the e-learning center at our School of Medicine. So I really stayed close to the industry, and you remember you and I were actually doing some mapping exercises, putting stuff on Google Maps while in campus and those kind of things. So I've always really been invested and interested in technology. As I took the healthcare path, I was interested more on the tech side of healthcare. When I finished school, I kind of deviated into more of the logistics side of things. Like, how do you, from a pharmaceutical perspective, make and distribute drugs a bit more efficiently. And that's how I ended up working for a couple of drone companies, and most notably Zipline. And while at Zipline, I think the tech ecosystem took a different turn, and I got exposed to a lot more. I got passionate about way more in the tech ecosystem, and that's how I joined Irembo as a board member first, and earlier this year now as the CEO. So
nice.
That's kind of who I am, and a lot more of stuff that I didn't mention, but that's
I mean, tell us that one thing that probably our viewers in the ecosystem will hear for the first time about you.
I used to own a business.
Really? I didn't know that.
I did a bunch of things. So
what happened? You closed it?
I did close it, yeah.
Why?
Pharmacy school happened, but I used to own a business that was doing first photocopy machine in the university before I became a student. And then secondly, I was selling electricity with people back then. So
interesting. Wow. So, when you've started, that means, I don't know if it's definitely going to come back. We don't know when, but, when you start this thing, it keeps just roaming around,
I'm sort of channeling that energy into what I do today. So,
I see.
Yeah.
Now, usually there's this question we ask you to entrepreneur. I don't know if I'd call you an entrepreneur. now, in few words, how do you see like our tech ecosystem and when it comes to its potential for growth? You know, talking about not just starting a company here and then spend a couple of years here and then not scale, but we're looking at starting it here, but scale faster, grow faster. Mm-hmm. How do you see that? And then what are your 2 cents on that?
I think for companies like Zipline and others that really get to be successful, having used Rwanda as a launch pad, I think the first thing is really the enabling environments that they come from. Zipline is, a Silicon Valley company, and so that means the flush with capital, flush with talent, and all the things that needs a company at such level needs to be able to scale really fast. And we saw that happening in real time, and we kind of were benefiting from those tailwinds that gets Zipline to be successful. I think for our ecosystem is more of what are some of those building blocks that a company like Zipline benefit from that need to be localized, right? Is it the investment landscape? Is it the talent pool? Is it the efficiency in executing? It's many. I wouldn't call out one, but it's really a bunch of building blocks that we need, First of all, it's really, of course, the resources that needs to be there. Number 2 is the talent pool, right? For the first time at Zipline, I met an engineer who only focuses on making a drone fly better in weather. Who is that person who's building a robot, or what is that other company that's doing similar? Do they have that engineer who can create those tailwinds for them to stand out competitively in such a market, right? So there is that talent pool and expertise that's there. There is, of course, manufacturing capabilities, right? Zipline has to manufacture hardware. They have to do so at a cheap cost and go to market fast and efficiently. Whether you are in hardware or not, is that something that's easy to do?
But if they've been able to do it, well, I get it. I mean, you're talking about personnel, you're talking about the financial capacity and all that kind of stuff. But all these companies that come into Rwanda, they start from here and then grow. But companies that have started from Rwanda don't make it in terms of growth. I mean, they don't expand as rapidly as one would think. So then comes the questions, is it not maybe some kind of irony in there when other companies that are coming here to start from here, they end up growing, but those that are starting from here, they're not. Is it something we're missing? Yes, I get access to capital, I get it, engineers and all that kind of stuff, but what is it that we're missing? Be it maybe, I don't know, maybe the startups themselves, the tech companies themselves, or even the policymakers. Do you think there's something we're missing here?
I think the first thing is really the conditioning. How are you conditioned to think about your business and its prospects? And when you see one thing you see with those startups that are coming here, I think there is already a certain conditioning that they are built for a global scale. You see it in their mission statements, you see it in how they work, you see it in the velocity, you see it in how they don't get boggled down into a particular space, right? When Zipline started in Rwanda, like in the second month, they were already thinking about the next country they would be in.
I see.
Before the product even worked.
Really?
Before the regulatory were even, as open to us as we needed. But that idea that, things are going to work out here. What is the 20% time and where should we spend it into expanding? So I think there is also that conditioning that you need to have.
I see.
And I always feel like all the other things will come and follow that state of mind and being that you have to be in.
I see.
And once you get started, I think nothing can stop you in that sense. So I don't know if you agree with that.
No, 100%. I mean, if there are thousands of things I'll do differently it's not a question of if, it's a question of when I start my second business is that kind of mindset, because that really changes everything, really, in terms of, and it sort of goes into everything that you do, in terms of like, whatever it is that I'm doing here, however flawed it is, I've got to be thinking what happens next, the next country, because it's just not just for Rwanda, I 100% agree with you, but still.
The second thing I think I can also talk about is this idea that you have to understand the local context and adapt. I think it's that level of adaptability that also companies have to have. Zipline could have built, or any other tech company, honestly, could build what is ideal for the US market, for the European urban market as a drone or a hardware solution. But given that they were here, they had to quickly adapt to what do you need to work here? If you are flying a robot in the airspace, how is network coverage? And how does the robot has to behave in a place where network coverage is constrained? I think that level of adaptability, I see it across the board when it's a software as a service company, when it's a fintech or something. Understanding those constraints and building towards them is also something that I feel like we often are building solutions or building products, but not really solutions that work for the space and ecosystem that we are into.
Interesting.
And then building that into the fabric of the product itself, a highly adaptable product when you scale and grow.
How do you navigate around creating the right team? There's creating it, there's maintaining it. Which these two things, the moment you think you've got the right people, then next thing is they want to leave. Okay, how do you do that? How do you transition? So how, again, I'm trying to sort of contrast, you've got a unicorn Zipline here, you've been part of it, and then you have now Irembo here, and the in-betweens, probably interact with lots of, founders in town. How do you navigate around that team?
Yeah.
Yes.
There are a couple of things that I could think about. First is really around, I first want to say, in an ecosystem like ours, all of the jobs to be done, all of the work that you do, often or not, you'll be the first one to be doing it. So there is that pioneering effect that comes into it that you have to constantly remember. There will never be a roadmap, there will never be a how-to, and there will probably not be someone experienced in that sense. I don't know how many B2B salespeople exist in the Rwandan ecosystem for a startup that's going B2B will hire from, or engineers with a particular skill set, right? So often than not, we are in this pioneering phase where we are creating things for the first time without a roadmap at all.
Yeah, so that comes with its own challenges.
Yeah, but it also means that we will have to be conditioned to bet on people who don't have the experience and build it within ourselves. And I've seen many companies that I advise, or even in places where I've worked, it's the most lacking aspect of the work, where how do you get to do something for the first time ever? How do you figure out sales? How do you figure out go-to-market? How do you figure out customer experience and the likes of that? I think the next thing is now to really navigate a growing ecosystem. I tell people, we were 1, now we are 5. That means people will start poaching from one another. How do you survive in that sense? And really that's all about structure, processes that are much more clear, that are efficient, that are documented. And I like concepts around, let's say, the checklist manifesto, for example, where you know exactly who does what, when, and how. And that means every single person can be outlived in a job. They can be easily replaced by someone else, and so on and so forth. So for me, it's more on, how do you make sure that not everything rests in someone's mind? You build the right structure, you build the right processes that people can do, but also the fact that you are doing it for the first time, it means you probably will never have the right person for it, but every time someone will have to grow into it, and every time you will be building afresh ways of doing things, and sometimes even you are working with people who have never seen this being done elsewhere. Someone have never seen how to do sales in a technology company, or someone has never worked on a scale at which Irembo works, for example, Now,
let's get a little bit practical now. It's been a couple of months. 3 to?
5 actually.
Oh, 5. So that's already long. I mean, let's now apply that. I mean, how has it been, you coming into Irembo? From being a board member, coming in as a CEO, and then finding an already existing team, maybe having to do some adjustments here and there. it might have been a roller coaster, to some extent, but then at the same time, just single out one specific scenario and tell me, okay, this is what I found and this is how I dealt with it. Like practically speaking, just give us something real here. Tell us.
I don't think I was a change CEO. I was more of a continuity CEO.
Continuity CEO, okay.
Exactly. So a lot of things had already been put in place. Building blocks had already been set up.
That's a good thing to have, isn't it?
And I'm quite fortunate, to be honest. And so what I'm just doing is kind of just managing the scale at which it's happening compared to the past. So
what are the challenges now? Speaking of that, the one thing that keeps you up at night when it comes to your team, what is that challenge? Maybe that you're currently facing now that wasn't there before, and maybe that might come hunting you. Maybe, I don't know if you do nothing about it, maybe say in the next 12 months or so. What is that one challenge you foresee? See, if we don't do something about this, it's just gonna be a big problem.
I think it's what we've been discussing earlier, right? First of all, reliability. You said earlier that it's one of the largest tech company here. Everything is entirely built here. As I told you, most of the things that we get to do, we are doing it for the first time ever. Right?
I see.
So that means that we are building a software that operates at this scale entirely here. And, arguably, there are a few people who have done something at a similar scale entirely built here. And so,
See, I'm still trying to think. You're
so
not
that
giving me
expertise and
Israel.
that ability.
You're not giving me some. Okay, let me rephrase the question.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
So Irembo, we see it on Twitter.
Okay.
Many times. Things not working. Mostly the driving license. Let's sing out that one, which probably I think is actually my wife is doing one, and she's been obviously struggling with it. My sister as well. So I can count 5 or plus people. It's up and down. Like, okay, you've got to be out by midnight or whatever. So take me through one of the most stressful day you've had, the last 5 months. What happened and how did you handle it?
Okay.
Give me something.
I like that you bring up the driving license idea. I think, I told you Irembo is we've been digitizing services. And of course we use an existing paradigm and thinking about it when you are digitizing a service. However, the way the consumer behave and respond to a service now accessible is completely different. So the traditional way was you open for registration for a few hours.
So you're doing it concurrently with people at the National Police, or it's just you're fully handling everything?
We have a way that we're integrated with them. Okay. So the idea is exactly when the...
Because I see announcements, they post it, say, okay, this date, this thing, things are going down.
No. So it's essentially there used to be
last time it was on a Saturday, right?
Yes. The idea is people would register for a determined period of doing sitting for exams. However, several factors such as the pandemic and the likes have prevented people from doing the exam for a long period of time.
So it's a backlog.
And then there is also consumer behavior changes. Everyone feels like they should own a car because electric cars are cheaper or something like that. The motor riders were pretty much the only people who were essential workers during the lockdown. So everyone should be a motor rider to secure their career. So that backlog and that consumer change increases the demand. And so it means that the model of planning for a certain number of people, for example, probably doesn't work. And so when we open for available, say, 100 places and you have 1,000 people who are fighting for that, and you've built a system that can handle significant traffic, it will of course crash.
So how did you do it?
Okay, so we worked with our stakeholders, the National Police. We set up, literally a war room and said, okay, there is really critical backlash against us. It's not sustainable. And the platform was probably not built for single high traffic events. The platform was built for people applying,
intermittently,
right? how do we adapt that? The national police was like, okay, instead of scheduling 1 to 2 weeks in advance or 3 months in advance, let's do 1 year in advance, and we were like, okay, now for us, what we have to do is when we open, it will be open permanently, but we will have to figure out a way to handle that first onset of traffic, right?
I mean, give us that inside story, man.
Yeah, so
give it to
I'll
us.
give you the latest one where we had to open services. It was a weekend, and we knew that there will be about more than 100,000 people trying to register for a particular list, and the schedules are loaded indefinitely. So that means you can register for your exam in November 2023.
Okay.
Or as much as you can do it in February 2023, wherever you want. And so ideally, we kind of just said, okay, we've gone through a sequence of this. We now know every component of our system, how much it can handle, what should we do to increase its capacity. Sometimes it included installing new server racks on our servers. Sometimes it's just included, let's say, before D-Day, resetting the cache to 0. It means...
Put all that aside, man.
Exactly.
Just tell me. Now, looking back when all those things happened, you were in the war room doing all this stuff. Probably not everything went as planned, I'd assume, right? So just give me 3 things you think if you were to redo it now, or maybe in the next whatever, you'd do differently. 3 things.
Scenario?
Yes.
Yeah. The first thing is communication.
Okay.
I think, it was our first time running such a war room. So you need to make sure that the senior engineer on call is also not the coordinator of the war room.
Oh, I see.
The person who's troubleshooting, someone else should be doing, hey, it looks like things are slowing down. Please prepare to communicate to citizen that things are someone else should be coming in.
Okay, communication one.
Yeah. So that's the first,
Second?
the first thing. I think really everything revolves around that. Second thing is load testing. I think really understanding that the demand is probably 10 times what you imagine will be.
Oh, wow. I like that. Yeah.
So I think and building the infrastructure, the tools and the process to do proper load testing.
I see.
Because every time we would have a good estimate of the demand, but then it would just be more than that. Because if I had planned to do the exam, I have all the reason, and I'm seated with you, you'll be like, what prevents me from doing the same? So that means it doubles naturally. If you see it on Twitter and you're like, oh, why not doing a new category? So that means that there is also all of those the consumer behaviors that drive other people. So it's really
communication, test loads test. I don't know if I'm saying it right. What's the third?
I think the third is engaging external partners and stakeholders, right?
I see.
Payment channel processing, whether that, you can pay on Irembo using banks, using MNOs and other people. So it's like, how do you bring everyone else on board so that they just don't see their numbers increasing like that?
Well, I don't know if you really, cause for me, I like action movies, by the way, and so I thought I would get some action stuff like, we did this.
No.
I don't know, maybe our viewers are satisfied, but for me, I think we're gonna have to plan for another one where, because again, listen, it's not every single day you get a company that's handling that kind of request, at least within the context of our ecosystem. Yeah. We aspire to grow, to do millions of requests, but it's not every single time that it happens. So I feel like I wanted, some kind of, action. But anyway, let's put a pause on that now.
No worries.
As we come to the end of this conversation, we usually like to ask, everybody on this, table. 5 months, but even more than that, So give me your 3 bits. You get the question, so 3 bits, that means companies, you exclude obviously us and Irembo, like 3 companies you think they're onto something in the next, 2-3 years or so.
Here in Rwanda?
Yes, we're all wonderful here. So give me your 3 bits.
My 3 bits. I think,
be as critical as you can get, man.
I think the first one is actually in healthcare. They're called Eden Care.
You didn't care.
They
just won the thing, right? The Hunger Peach thingy.
No. They weren't in Hunger Peach. It's the first digital health insurance.
Oh yeah, I know the guy. What's his name again? I think I've met him. Moses, I guess, Kenyan guy.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Oh, he didn't. Okay.
Yeah. So I do feel like they are onto
Is it because isn't there any bias because you're coming from a health whatever?
No, it's actually we met them through Irembo.
I see.
In trying to...
Yeah, he's called Moses Mukundi.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
So I do feel like they're onto something in that sense, and they are really innovating in the right space. Second one, they pretty much do, farm to market kind of thing, but I love, I think the founders are former people who run a restaurant and, they did food delivery.
Are they Mulika Farms?
Yes,
okay.
I think so.
Just had to look them up. Okay, Mulika Farms.
And I felt like the way that they're approaching that solution, that problem is quite interesting.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Third?
I'm quite intrigued by, this is still in stealth mode. They haven't much publicized, but they are really rethinking how to digitize informal retail.
Retail. What are those people? Do I know them?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah. They are still in stealth modes, kind of exploring proper products.
So retail, what do you mean by retail?
I think it's really kind of connecting retail with suppliers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So as we wrap this up, so we usually like to just an open mic for our guests. Anything, maybe message to our founders out here in town. Again, back to how we started, or I don't know, just ecosystem, as a whole. Anything.
The one thing I can think about is really with the microeconomic kind of headwinds that are coming at the technology ecosystem more globally, but also they will particularly hit the African and Rwandan tech ecosystem hardly over the coming months. It's really important to amp it up with how we do and build and what it is that we do. It's really important to start with the customer and really get to solve a real problem that the customer is facing. But then also be very, very serious and deeply invested and intentional about the processes, the structures, and what it is that makes the business sustainable and growth. Most of the technology companies will be half investable, half kind of growing on their own using their cash flow or some other way, bootstrapped in a certain way. But I think we will have to really think differently. I think the last thing I can probably say here is our market is unique. When you say that it's small, when you say that it's this, for me, I look at it as it's a uniqueness of the market. And the fact that it's unique, it presents its own opportunities. Let's not just look at the challenges of it being small, of it being limited, of what the particularities of the consumers are. Look at what are the opportunities of a highly concentrated market, for example. You can reach every aspect, every corner of the country in less than 2 or 3 hours.
Hey folks, there you have it. So let us know what you think. And for me, again, I'm not satisfied. We definitely have got to have a second one. And let us know if you want to, because we can only do it if you want to. Just comments and let us know. And again, listen, we're doing this for the ecosystem. They're doing it for all of us because we want this ecosystem to grow. Because if the ecosystem grows, we all grow with it. So yeah, thanks for watching. I was going for showing up. Showing up. Yeah, thanks for watching and thanks for coming, Israel. It was a pleasure. And please share your feedback. Signing out.